Good afternoon, everybody. My name is G. Marie Herron, and I'm not actually looking at any of you. I don't have two screens, so I'm just looking at my slideshow. But I'm very excited to be here. And today, our Lunch and Learn is Declutter to Dollars, 10 Ways to Maximize Property Value. I am a professional organizer. I've been helping people to sell and dwell well for a couple of decades now. And I fell in love with the real estate industry shortly into my career. And I started to specialize in helping people prepare for the market. So I kind of like to think of myself as the prerequisite or the ice cream sundae before the realtor and or stager come in and put the cherry on top. And I wanted to give you, in my humble opinion, my best 10 ways to maximize property value for your clients. So that's what today's goal is. I know Ella's working on getting the chat set up. So every 10 or 15 minutes or so, I'll stop and ask her to check the chat box for me for your questions. But we will go ahead and get started, and I'll also save time at the end for Q&A as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is solidifying client goals relative to really not leaving any money on the table. I think that I take my fiduciary responsibility, I'm sure, as strongly as you do. And I want to make sure that when we're preparing a home for market, that they're going to be able to get the most amount of money that they can for probably one of their largest investments. So the first thing I do is I solidify what is their goal. And I would highly recommend that to you as well. And you probably do this innately, but the reason I wanted to list it as number one is because the process of getting ready to buy and sell is so stressful, emotional, physical, and spiritually difficult for our clients that knowing what their goals are is a great reminder of why they want to do what they're doing. And everybody has different goals, right? So, you want to know whether your clients, maybe they want to go to a better school system. Maybe they want a multi-generational home now because they're taking care of young children as well as senior parents. Maybe they're at the time of their life where they want to go into a high rise with a doorman by a golf course, or maybe somebody wants to live as a minimalist in a log cabin down in the Carolinas. So, understanding the client goals, I think is very, very important because we all need a big why. So if you can connect the process, this project management, which is really what it is to buy and sell a house, if you can keep connecting their big why and their goals, it'll act as an impetus to get them to that, open house or that listing date. And the big whys are, I guess, the motivation. In the last 10 years, I've sold and moved out of two houses. And now I'm in a condo in a beautiful area of New Jersey because I wanted to live in northern New Jersey where I could hike because I'm an avid hiker. So I didn't want, the maintenance anymore, if you will, because that's what I want to do with my time. So understanding your clients' goals and their big why is important. I know that a lot of times when I'm with my clients and they're now months into preparation and they're tired and they're trying to figure out what to do with repairs and charities and this, that, and the other thing, I take them back to, why are we doing this? You want to get to your grandchildren, you want to get to having that nest egg, etc. So we all need the big why and we all need the goals, right? So when we're in the real estate arena, we can't change the location of their home. The market's going to dictate the price, but whether or not they have the house of their dreams or a house of horrors is based on the condition. And here's where the whole time management aspect of getting a home ready for market is choice management, right? The way they show their home, they can influence that greatly. They can do the work or they cannot do the work. They can choose however they want to show their house, with your help, of course. And we're really good at giving them advice on how their house should be shown, but the effort is always going to be on them and whether or not they change the condition in order to make the most amount of money available. So condition is all about what I'm doing when I'm helping them declutter their house. Some people have been in their homes for decades, and there's a lot of content. Typically, the longer somebody's in a home, the more they have, especially in this tri-state area. And if they've been in their home for more than 5 years, there's probably quite a bit of time management that has to go into preparing the house for market. But again, it's a choice, and it's all about whether or not we can help them put this home in the best condition as possible so they can get the most amount of money out of it. The second maximization, if you will, would be to solidify their dates. So we know their goal, right? But we also want to know, because you might have an idea of when you want them to be on the market, and they might have an idea of when they want to be on the market, and they might be in the same arena, but they might not. But depending on how much work they have to do to change the condition of that house, there may or may not be enough time. The phone calls I love to get would be the one that says, I'm thinking about selling in about a year. Can you begin to help me? That's wonderful. That means that's not going to be very stressful. But then I also get the calls that say, I want to be up in 2 weeks. So that's a lot trickier. Can we do that? Of course, we can all do that. But it's nice to have a little bit of time. So, asking them, and knowing what the market is in terms of dictating when's best to sell, is we figure out their goal, and then we work backwards from the date based on the amount of work that needs to be done in the house. So goals and dates are super important in terms of figuring out the dollars. And the third thing would be to chunk it down. So we know what they want to do. We know when they and you want to do it. And now we have to figure out, okay, how do we get them there? So everybody might have different methodologies. I have my own methodologies when I work with clients, but it's really important these days to have what I call extended memory. So there's so much to do to get a home ready, and you already know this, but what's going to be the tool? What tool are we going to give our clients to help them chunk it down to make it manageable so they do this project? I have a very simple Excel spreadsheet I call a MAP, which stands for a Master Action Property Plan. And on this Excel spreadsheet, I basically list everything room by room that needs to be done, who's going to be involved, the deadlines. And I start at the curb with my clients. I go through the entire home, every room. I open up the closet doors, count the kitchen cabinets, etc., basement, attic, garage, backyard, whether or not there's outer buildings. And it looks something like this. Really simple, whether you ask them to do a checklist, if they want to go digital and they want to use an app, Google Docs, it doesn't matter. The point is they're utilizing something for extended memory based on their goal and based on the timing, right? So you've got that date in mind that they want to be on the market. So, when you saw that picture of me with the clipboard in the previous slide, and I was writing out this map, pretty much what I'm doing is, again, with them, and because we want to get their agreement, or we want to actually encourage them to do certain things. So I'll just color code the rooms or the space, and they can either, when we write down what needs to be done, they can decide there or later, who's the person going to be? Is it going to be somebody in the family? Do we need to hire out? What are we saying? So if we walked into the foyer and the foyer had a sconce that was falling off the wall, that might be a handyman fix. That might be somebody in the family that can fix it. But basically, we list everything that needs to be done throughout the whole home, the person, the date, and all the details right here, so that we have this one home or this one Bible or checklist, again, whatever you want to call it, so that over time, we have an accountability piece, a responsibility piece, and, the means of doing it. So that's just what I call a master action property plan. And you don't have to get too fancy, and lots of different tools work. But the bottom line is, what is the client going to use for extended memory to remember to do all the things that you suggest when you walk through the home? And with the concept of chunking it down and utilizing extended memory, I have a motto and a maxim I like to use called one box a day keeps the clutter away. So if, for example, on this spreadsheet, the first room was the attic, and, underneath the attic, it talked about maybe the client's idea for the attic was, you know what, they're going to be downsizing and they're not going to have an attic. So they want this attic to be completely cleared out. And maybe it's full right now. But if they take one box down a day, at the end of the month, they've gone through 30 boxes, right? So we're chunking it down. So whether it's one box in the attic, whether it's one shelf in a medicine cabinet in a bathroom, whether it's one kitchen drawer, one nightstand drawer, the idea is on that spreadsheet, master checklist, it's to break things down into little, almost bite-sized pieces, baby-sized pieces, so that they don't get overwhelmed. Because if they get overwhelmed, they might start changing dates or change their mind. So we want to help them along the way. And of course, as we declutter, we know we're adding more value, because we know that a decluttered home, you're always going to get your money back on that. A lot of the houses I work on, I've been told after they sell that the reason they sold for, a higher price was because of all the decluttering that we done. And I've heard other stories where, the realtor tells their client, if you don't get rid of a lot of this stuff, if you will, I'm going to have to list the house, $50,000 less than what it should be. So one box a day to help them kind of chunk it down, because we all only have so many hours in a day, so if they've got a spacious garage, they might not be able to do the garage in one whole day, but maybe in a couple of hours they can do the workbench. So the idea is, on that master checklist, breaking it down piece by piece, again, who's going to be responsible for it. So if, this one area of the garage took, say, 3 hours, but now it's decluttered. Not only is it decluttered and ready to show, but it's also ready to move. So a lot of times we can help our clients get ready to move while they're getting ready to sell. And that's just, very helpful for them as well. So they can also aim for one category at a time. So, 2 slides ago, I talked about one box at a time. They can also go one room at a time, because everybody's got a different amount of time that they want to put in. Obviously, this is a very cluttered room on the left. He was using it as what I call a shipping and receiving room. And we know with online services now, the amount of items that you can get on Amazon and other subscriptions that come in all the time. But you can't see the value of this room at all. And even though the picture on the right with the decluttering process done, there still might be many more ways to up the value of the dollar here, in terms of, changing the furniture flow, dealing with, new bedding, maybe an area rug, window treatments, maybe even less furniture than there, but you can't even get to that point unless the decluttering can get out as well. So for a lot of people, just instead of what I call zigzag organizing, you say concentrate on one room at a time, start in one corner, and literally work your whole way around the room in the decluttering process. This way, they're not zigzagging, because if, for example, let's say the stationary bike is going to go out on bulk night, and then they run downstairs to look at the calendar to see what night the town has bulk night, and then the doorbell rings, and then they go in and they answer the door, and then they come back and they say, now the dog needs a walk, etc. It just leads to this zigzag. So focusing is really important, and staying in one area at a time is also really important. So this is all still part of chunking it down, and all of this can be listed on the master action property plan. And if that feels too overwhelming to people, if you could just give them a post-it a day or a tiny little piece of a calendar where say, you know, what three things can I do today to help get my house on the market? All right, so I'm going to take out a post-it, and by the time I go to bed tonight, I will call breast cancer for a donation pickup. Maybe that's number one. Maybe number two is, you know what, I've got a lot of obsolete electronics in the house that we don't need anymore, old phones, I've got a fax machine, a printer that doesn't work anymore, maybe some, CPUs. So I'm going to take all those to the electronics recycling department in my town. And maybe number three is let me go through the winter accessories in the front hall closet because it is getting colder. And I know I've got gloves and hats and scarves that I don't need anymore, or I'm not going to want in my next home. And by the way, if you don't already know about this, NCJAR is having a clothing donation event going on, not clothing, coats. So any winter items. So if you don't already know about that, you can do that for your clients as well. Hint, hint. All right. So having, whether it's a fancy Excel spreadsheet, whether it's a Google document, whether your clients are working with Post-its, the bottom line is you're getting them into productivity. You're getting them to be productive and work off of a list and taking these tiny little pieces toward, getting the clutter out so you can get the house ready. So number four, in terms of decluttering and getting things out of the house, is giving them or helping them with resources for purging. And, I use the word purging, but purging doesn't necessarily mean garbage. It means now that the clients have decided, you know what, I don't need this house. I don't need this item in my house anymore. I don't want to pay a mover to move it. I don't want to take it to my next place. I'm not able to show the room well. Once I make a decision to get it out, where's it going to go? Is it a donation? Is it a sell? Is it a junk removal? Is it a shred, etc.? So I'm sure in your toolbox, you might already have a lot of decluttering resources, but keep a running list. I put out quarterly a home preparation resource list, and I give it out on my website when somebody signs up for my newsletter. But it's about 4 to 5 pages. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I collaborate with the president of a moving company. And she and I together, we just keep this going quarterly, and then we update it. Depending on what county you're in, a lot of these resources could change. But having a running list for your clients on ways to, for items to exit is fantastic. The other list I give out often to my clients is called Decluttering Resources in a Nutshell. And the way that form came about was years and years ago, I was invited to do an assessment in a woman's home in Teaneck, actually. And she'd just become a widow and she was considering assisted living at that point. And her husband had been married for over 50 years. The house was full of stuff. And it was overwhelming and paralyzing to her. And when I went through the home, as we were going through the home, I was like, well, I said, you could consign this, you can donate that. She wasn't very techie. If you have somebody in the family, you could do, Facebook and, the Buy Nothing Project. And we could do a dumpster. We could get a hauling company. We could do all kinds of things, or I could help you to let go of a lot of things and find really good homes that would pull on your heartstrings. And she sat down in the chair and she's like, I'm exhausted. And you just mentioned, half a dozen or more ways that I could start to declutter. Do you have that in writing? And I went, I said, as a matter of fact, I don't, but I will. And so I created this form, which if you want, just send me an email and I'm happy to share it with you. But it's really, it's a nutshell of all the different ways you can get things out of your house. So I think I'm on number 4. I think what I'm going to do is pause and ask Ella if there's any questions at the moment in the chat box based on anything we've gone over so far. So,
There are no questions, unless if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
okay, all right. So
It's saying someone asked what's your email for the form.
it's and it'll be at the end too, but it's JM for Jean Marie at POSSEPartnersLLC.com. So Posse, POSSE, which stands for Professional Organizing Solutions Serving Everyone, and then Partners plural, PARTNERS, and LLC for Limited Liability Corporation.com. There was my title slide, but for some reason, Ella and I couldn't change this. When you see my name in the box, it's missing the P in Posse, but it's JM at POSSEPartnersLLC.com. All right, so if there's no questions at the moment, I will go on. So resources for purging, always really wonderful to have on hand for your clients so you can help them get their items out. When I'm with clients and we are in purging mode, one of the ways that is really fantastic, especially in this tri-state area, is simply to put things outside with a free sign on it, depending on where the house is. But this works really well in a lot of cases, especially, if they're on a good street. So I think a lot of people don't think of this anymore, but it happens all the time, So I'll be in a home and there'll be some pretty nice things, but they don't want them. And instead of waiting for a charity pickup or a consignment and they just want to be done with it, it goes out. So free is a good thing. It's a good way. Donations, I wanted to speak a minute or two on donations because you could easily go onto Google and punch in donations near me, and you'll get a plethora of answers. There are charities that will come to the house and do a pickup. My favorite in the northern New Jersey area right now is probably breast cancer, depending on the zip code. They may come several times a week to that particular community, and they're always on time, they're always professional. And then any of the money generated from their thrift stores or the resale goes back to breast cancer research. There's many different vet organizations as well. Post-COVID, it's been hard on a lot of the smaller charities. A lot of the smaller charities did fold. They had, senior volunteers, and the labor is always difficult. The manpower is difficult. Getting trucks, especially men who are able to carry heavy things. So, even places like Habitat for Humanity, it's easier to drive things to a Habitat for Humanity restore than it is to get a Habitat for Humanity location to come with men in a truck to pick it up. I find, especially in this Bergen County area, if you're in the Bergen County area, you could wait either weeks to try to get somebody to pick it up. The process of getting somebody even scheduled, you have to send photos. A lot of times the management in the charities takes one look at the photos and decides, you know what, it's got floral upholstery. I know my clients aren't going to want that. Or you know what, it's a big curio or a big bed or it's big furniture, and the type of folks in the restores and the thrift stores, that's not the kind of home they have. They've got small apartments and they're looking for smaller size things. So furniture is probably about the hardest thing to donate. In my opinion, at the moment, a lot of times, if you're in a town where they have bulk night, that's wonderful. There might be a limit as to the number of pieces. You still might need help getting the furniture out of the house and to the curb, but that can be very advantageous as well. So, but donating what I call smalls, things that are a one-man carry and can fit into a garbage line or a box, is a lot easier than the bigger, bulkier items. So that's donations. Going digital. So there are many people who do well on places like the Buy Nothing Project, Facebook, Craigslist, etc. And then there are other people who get very frustrated with the vetting, the scammers, etc., trying to figure out a public or a private place to meet. So if you have somebody in your sphere of influence that's really good on the phone, take advantage of that. I also find in a lot of cases, if something is only going for a couple dollars, it's probably easier to donate it. But a lot of people are doing digital, and then there are just as many folks who don't want to deal with it at all. But that's always an option in terms of decluttering. And then there's consigning. Consignment shops were also hit very hard during the COVID time. A lot of them folded up. There's probably about a quarter of them this year than, several years ago. Um, it's a little time consuming. They do take a percentage, but again, I would Google consignments near me. And if, people have some higher end items, maybe not enough for an estate sale, but they've got a few things that they want to consign, that might be a good option also for decluttering purposes. And then there's always estate auction and liquidation companies. Estatesales.net is a great website to go to if you're unfamiliar with how this works. Very time consuming. So if your clients want to sell, they want to have a couple months to do it, because a lot of these companies that do this, on the up and up and professionally, they need a lot of lead time, for their dealers, for their marketing, for their advertising, to transfer things back and forth, to evaluate things for the right price, to do the proper research. But many of them will also look at pictures now. So you can get in touch with a lot of these companies and send pictures ahead of time, and they'll tell you yay or nay if they're interested. And then a lot of these companies also have different value levels. Like somebody might not take a sale if they feel that the value of the home contents is under 10,000. Somebody else might have a 25,000, $25,000 limit, and on and on. So, and then always in terms of preparation for the sale, the question is, are we selling at the end? Are we selling things in the beginning? Are we preparing the home before or after the sale? And is there room in the home to, stage it and photograph it and put the things that are for sale someplace else? Or do we need the whole home to be available to do some type of a liquidation? So that's another way to add value and get things out. There's always the dumpster, which is a great option for a lot of people. Always want to check with your town ordinances. Is it allowed in the street? Is it allowed in the driveway? Is it allowed on the lawn? How long is it allowed to be there? And then depending on the neighborhood, there's many, many people who complain that when they get a dumpster, the neighbors tend to dump into their dumpster. The thing to remember about this is remember how they price, whether it's weekly, monthly, if they charge for a drop off and a pickup. And if you get a dumpster, somebody in the family still needs the strength and the brawn to carry the items out from the house to the dumpster. So utilizing a dumpster is great, but there can be a lot of physical work involved. And, if I'm working with a senior couple, I know that a dumpster isn't going to work. So my favorite decluttering resource is a junk removal company. I can truly say that if I have 2 days and 1 day with a junk removal company, I can pretty much get a home decluttered and ready for market. That being said, it has everything to do with our clients' decisions, because everybody has different attachment to their things. And the speed at which somebody makes a decision on an item in a house is going to be different house to house, in terms of the emotional connection, etc. But this particular resource is one of my favorites in terms of speed and efficiency. And I work with some really good ones if anybody ever needs a resource. So that would be junk removal. And if necessary in the decluttering process, if somebody has a tremendous amount of stuff and you say to your clients, we cannot photographed the way it is, I need you to get 50% out, and they're adamant that it's all coming to the next house, here's where you can temporarily use a storage unit. And again, they're moving anyways, they're selling and then they're moving. So being able to pack them, the things they don't need in the house at the moment, so it can show better, a storage option might be just what you need to get the house on the market. But I always say if necessary, because they're very expensive. And you want to make sure that after the client sells and moves, that they do empty that storage unit, because what happens in a lot of cases is our clients keep a storage unit and it goes on for years and years and years. And there's actually a lot of money that they spend down the road with the units. Okay. Number 5 is treat kryptonite special. So I find that memorabilia in most homes is something they may not want to touch until the next house. So when I'm helping folks declutter a home, this is the last category I'm going to do with them, because this is where all of the emotions come in. Somebody might not be attached to, that 30-year-old Macy's living room set. But if it's their daughter's, first grade report card, if it's a wedding dress, if it's a photo album, those are the kind of things that you want to treat very special. So this is a picture of me in a client's cedar closet. The closet was empty, and that's actually all of her memorabilia. Like, she knew, even though she gave herself a year to get the house ready, the house was pretty complicated. There was a lot of clutter in the house. And she was not ready to deal with any of the memorabilia. So she said, let's pack it all up, let's label it. And when I get to the next house, that'll be my winter project. But this is like a hardcore area for clients, and I never twist anybody's arms when it comes to getting rid of anything. I just figure out, how do I, make it special for them and hide it during the showing process. So usually I can find some place in a house which is a good hiding spot. And speaking of a lot of these older things that touch on their heartstrings when it comes to memorabilia, we can offer them repurposing ideas, upcycling ideas. So this middle picture is actually a baby crib. The client had a baby crib and she would not let the baby crib go. All of her siblings had been in it, even though she was in her 60s. So she decided, you know what, I'm going to turn it into a piece of furniture. So whether it's, telling folks that they can take a wedding dress and make a pillow out of it, a receiving bag out of it, liners for the lingerie drawers, or they could take the fur coat and do a teddy bear or a vest. We're always trying to help our clients figure out, if they're going to keep memorabilia, can it possibly be repurposed so that they can honor and respect it? Or is it something that should just go? So these are the kinds of things that take our clients a long time to let go of. Photos, are they going to be digitizing their photos, or are we just moving the bins for now? And then if there's items that kind of make the home feel obsolete, can we maybe hide it until they move? So if we've got, the sewing machine and the rocking chair, and you're okay with it being in the room, then fine. But if there are things that you want changed in order to bring up the value, again, maybe there's an area of the house where we can kind of stow away things and hide them for the moment, just for the moment, till they move. Resources for hiring out would be the next tip. Just like you have resources for purging, resources for hiring out, because there might be, repairs that need to be done. So in our back pocket, we want to have a really good handyman, and they might be asking us for electricians and plumbers and roofers and chimney sweeps and oil tank and stagers and professional organizers, because getting a home decluttered and ready to sell is a village. And almost always our clients are going to need outside help. So having those professionals in your back pocket is wonderful. I'm so grateful at this point in time that I have a lot of these professionals myself in my back pocket, because a lot of times, since I'm in there decluttering and helping them get organized, they're asking me, do you have somebody for this? And do you have somebody for that? And, there's a lot of people who need attorneys because they still don't have a will or a power of attorney. And we're going to talk about papers in a second. So having these resources is great. Not only is it great because you can help your clients, but then again, not that plumbing is decluttering, but if you've got, a sink that's not working well, it's all part of the process. Packing is another one. So, when they're getting the house ready to sell, chances are, this is a several month process, but right now we're going into winter. So somebody can easily pack all their warm weather clothing right now. And what I try to do is find a spot in the home, not the living room, but once everything is packed, how can I tuck it away? As people go through the decluttering process and they let go of things, they're making more room in their cabinets, their drawers, their vanities, their closets. So usually it's pretty easy to stash things away. And then the process of packing things up, of course, declutters the room really well and always adding more value. So that's pack. 8 would be digitize. So, I'm in kitchens like this all the time. I would imagine you are too. But even though we're in a digital age, there's a lot of people that still have a lot of paper. Paper is one of those things, filing, it falls off the to-do list because maybe it's not, an emergency, if you will. But now's the time as the client is getting ready to declutter their kitchen counters, they're getting ready to declutter their office. Now's the time, and it goes on that list, right? It goes on our master action property plan. They want to get their files in order. They want to get their documents in order. If they're, titles and all their legal papers, if those things are not at the ready, now's the time to do it. And it can be very time consuming for people. Sometimes paper is harder than the rest of the house. 1 inch of paper could have, 25 things to do depending on what the piece of paper is. And if you have a home with a tremendous amount of paper, especially if it has account information, etc., it is such a wonderful resource to have a shredding truck pull up right in front of the house. For people who've been in their home for decades, often the attics and the basements are full of paper. So that's a great resource as well. So digitize is another great way to declutter a home because you wouldn't want to show a home with all that on the kitchen counter because we want to imagine ourselves living in that kitchen. All right. 9 is check in regularly. So, your client's goals, your client's timing, you've helped them figure out their resources, and all the things they need to do to get the house on the market, but check in with them during intervals. That way, not only do they know you're there, but it's also that little push that says, oh gosh, okay, Jean Marie's coming back over and I didn't do the master bedroom closet. So again, it kind of pushes them to be a little bit more accountable and to keep the project going. So you can keep everything running on time. And then the last one, selfish plug, but not really, is refer a professional organizer. So I know everybody in the basic world has heard of a stager, but I think a lot of people don't think of organizers relative to the home preparation process. There are plenty of people that can do this themselves, but there's a ton of people who can't. And then there's a lot of people who don't want to, because if you've got a younger person and they're a dual professional couple with children, they've got no time, and this is the last thing they want to do in their free time. If you have a senior person, they might not have the physicality or the bandwidth to do it anymore. So a professional organizer is going to know exactly how to declutter the home and can work right in line with the real estate agent to make sure that we are working towards exactly what you want to see when you put this home up on the market. So that would be your 10 tip for maximizing your dollars. And so what we talked about in terms of our 10 tips, tricks, solutions, and ways to maximize property value today would be solidify your client goals, solidify the dates, help break it down for them, give them resources for purging, make sure the memorabilia is treated very special, giving them resources for hiring out, and packing is a great solution. Besides all the ways we talked about, purging, digitizing, checking in with them regularly, and whether it's a professional organizer, a senior move manager, a daily money manager, one of their adult children, giving your clients some sort of a support system to help them. Because again, when you look at that list, that extended memory of everything that you'd like done before the house goes on the market, it's a lot. And it's a lot in this day and age. So those are your 10 ways. So Ella, I'm gonna open it up to Q&A now
Sure.
and see if there's anything in the chat box. Anything in the chat box?
Yes. From Amy, do you have an app recommendation for digitizing docs and photos? Also, what is your suggestion for magazine hoarding?
Okay, let me go to the first one. Do I have an app for digitizing? Was it box inventory? What was it? Can you read it again?
Yes, it said, do you have an app recommendation for digitizing docs and photos?
I do not. I do not have a particular app. I would have to vet some of them. But I can't say that I have one off the top of my head. I would say depending on the value, depending on the home content, a lot of insurance companies will have certain apps relative to valuation, if that's the purpose. But in your average home, I would say that just taking a picture or doing the scanning to somebody's own computer is probably okay. But I do not have that app resource. The second one would be magazine hoarding. So, and the question was, what do you do about it?
What is your suggestion for magazine hoarding?
Okay, so that's kind of hoarding is a blanket word. As I'm sure most of you know, regular hoarding or people who have hoarding tendencies, it's really a unique mental health disorder, and there's all different types and levels. But if somebody's just collecting just magazines, I don't know how many magazines it is. I always like to give people a boundary. So, for example, if somebody's got X amount of subscriptions, maybe the number of subscriptions is a boundary. Maybe the dollar amount that somebody subscribes a year is a boundary. I'm going to allow myself, $300 a year for these subscriptions. Maybe the number that come in monthly in the mail, for example, to the coffee table, you know what? I'm going to allow myself 5 magazines on the coffee table each month. And when the next month's 5 magazines come in, I'll recycle the ones I have. So if there's a huge amount of magazines in the home that the client will not let go of, there's a reason. There's probably a why, and you need to know the why. And if it's a really serious situation and, maybe you can't walk in the house because there's a pathway between the magazines, then that becomes more of a therapy situation and psychological help. So I hope I answered that one okay. Any other questions?
Thank you. Yes. From Deborah, could you tell them to burn magazines or papers in a fire pit or fireplace during the time they make fires seasonally? Just a thought.
My understanding is you should not do that because of the ink and the processing of the papers on certain magazines. Like there's, I believe, toxins. So I think that's why you shouldn't be burning them in the house. I've heard that several times over the years, that it's just not, it's not good air quality to put it in your regular fireplace.
Okay, thank you. So,
Mhm.
how much do you charge for your services?
So first I have to understand what it is the client wants. Typically, if the person is within my geographical area, I have something called my power hours, which is a half day session, which is 4 hours of hands-on organizing. It also includes the assessment, which is done on the phone, usually with video at this point. I don't do walkthrough assessments anymore. I can really glean the client's project when I ask them questions and when I see the home on video. And it also includes a session summary report, which is a written report when I go home on, what we did, what our goals were, what their homework is, what homework I might have. And I charge $4.99 for that day. So that's what called my power hours. And that's just an example. Sometimes I get called on really unique projects with a lot of responsibility, but I would say it probably averages around 125 an hour. Um, and I'm not just a consultant. I can consult, but I'm working one-on-one with my clients. I'm helping manage the project. I'm giving them all kinds of resources. I'm climbing the stairs with them, dealing with the boxes, etc. So it's really a full service. I can work alone or I can work in a team, depending on how fast or how quickly or how much stuff there is. And I need to understand the client's goals and if you're involved, also the realtor goals, because if the client is already working with a real estate agent and they know exactly how they want the house shown, then I will work toward all those goals.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all we have, unless if anyone wants to ask more questions, feel free.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question in a minute, but this is all my contact information. So this is my website. I also have a page on my website that's just for realtors. So there's a lot of information there as well. I do a monthly e-zine, which I write myself. Don't use AI, and that's just monthly. I don't really abuse my list at all. I do a little bit on Facebook. I do a little bit on LinkedIn. I'm not huge into social media. I'm definitely more of a pick up the phone and talk to me kind of a person. For 20 years, 99% of my clients have always come through referrals. So I've been very lucky that way. And I service Northern New Jersey and Lower Hudson Valley. Um, but what I was wondering is, what did you learn today? So, of the 10 ways that I showed you, do you have any other favorite ways? So here's what we talked about in terms of ways to maximize the property value. So I'll put it out to the chat. Um, if there's another way that you would recommend, because this was me talking for the last hour, but you're all full of, a wealth of information as well. So if you know of something that's not on that list that you want to add, we could talk about that now. Anything coming in, Ella? Any questions? And no burning questions?
Not really. Oh,
Okay.
Deborah raised her hand. Give me 1 second, Deborah. You can unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was very interesting. I learned a lot. What I like usually to tell my clients is as you're decluttering, you're also kind of packing your stuff.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
that's what's one of your things, like you're packing stuff, and put it, packing it away to move it. So like that was one of the best things I thought was, packing a day, a box a day.
Off the day. Hmm.
Even if you made it like a box a room a day, you know,
Hmm.
where
Yep.
you did one from the dining room, one from the living room, one from the bedroom, that kind of thing. because that is the best way I feel, because you're not telling them to like get rid of anything. Because sometimes that you got to be pretty, you know, watch your words, what you say and stuff like that. But I think that is the way I usually try to tell people to, when they have to remove things,
Yeah.
you're not getting rid of it. You're just making it cleaner, and you're packing it because you're going to move anyway. The idea is we're going to sell it. So you're going to have to pack up anyway, kind of,
Yep. Absolutely. And I tell them, as we're working to prepare their house for the market, I said, this is step one. Step two, which
Hmm.
comes anywhere from 2 weeks to, 3 months later, is you're moving and the house has to be left in broom swept condition. So the
Right.
bottom line is you're going to have to make a decision on all your contents, no matter what. You might have a little
Exactly.
more time, and it's very expensive to move. And everybody
Yeah.
knows that it's expensive to sell, it's expensive to buy, and it's expensive to move.
To move.
And if they show me a waste can and they say, oh, well, you can pack that, I might just say, oh, well, do you know what room in the next house you'd want to have it in? Well, I'm not sure. I'll just store it in the basement for now. And I
Hmm.
just kind of try to lend it toward less is more, because you're going to
Yes.
pay somebody, you got to box it, you got to,
Hmm.
transport it, you got to open it on the other end, you got to find. So I try very much to get people to, if they don't love it, use it, or need it,
Hmm.
I ask them not to pack it, or I create a secondary, I call it a second pass area where,
Hmm.
today they might say, move it, but a week from now, as it gets harder and harder to declutter and pack, they might say, you know what, second thought, I'm not bringing the purple shower curtain. It's okay.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah. So yes, and I think it's a great way to push people. I don't want to use the word push, but to,
Right.
nudge them along and saying, you're moving. Like you're not just selling, you're moving.
Right. They
And
have to look at it that way. Yeah.
absolutely. That
Yeah.
was great.
And also, like, I know a lot of people, if they have pictures, I usually tell them, if you have a picture frames that are easily removable,
Yes.
take them all down. But like, for example, if there is a huge frame on the wall with some pictures, I'd rather see that picture on the wall than a nail in the wall.
Hmm.
So I would say leave the stuff on the wall. Do not take down, especially if it's of their family. But I
Yeah.
would rather see that and show the house that way. But anything that's movable, whether it's on the refrigerator, whether it's on a end table or a foyer table, just get down all those things and, keep it either empty or put one little vase there. Like less is more, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. I work with a lot of stagers, so the rule of thumb is always like 1 to 3 on a surface, depending on the size of the
Mhm.
surface. So,
Mhm.
one is great. And again, depending on the size, maybe three. But
Right,
that was
right,
always the rule of thumb when selling. And I love
right,
it. And when you tell, they know when you say prospective buyers are going to be coming through the home, it's a little weird because it's their home, but these are strangers. So I
right.
tell people, pack all the things you don't want people to see, your
Mm-hmm.
family memorabilia, your valuables, personal items, and now they are ready for the next house. But
Mm-hmm.
people put a lot of that stuff out. I
Yeah.
tell people, think about a hotel room. Not that I want to skeeve anybody out, but when you
Mm-hmm.
go into a hotel room, hundreds of people have slept there before you, hundreds.
Right, right,
And in that bedroom, use that bathroom, that suite. But you don't think of that when you walk in because it's so minimally displayed, right? It's
right.
just crisp, clean white
Clean.
bedding,
Mm-hmm.
a couple things, one television, one lamp, one clock, etc. And I tell people that's how you want your house to be because you want them to envision themselves living in there. And you give them that palette that they say, oh, you know what? It's actually spacious because the more
Mm-hmm.
clutter you have, the more they think, okay, it wasn't maintained, there's not enough room for me here. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
need to make it so that when they walk in, they go, okay, I could move in.
Right. I
Because we
could
don't want to
picture
give
my
them work.
stuff here. Right.
Yes, we
You
could
want
pick,
them
yeah,
to picture their own things here and not
exactly.
look at your stuff and then leave the house going, wow, that was a cute table, or I
Yeah,
really love, you don't want that feedback. And that's
yeah,
another way of if it doesn't come easily and you get that feedback, you need to tell that to your sellers and say, all I got feedback was on all your items. So we really need to declutter.
yeah, yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you. You got it. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, Ella?
Yes, from Jacqueline. Are garage
Okay.
sales still happening and popular enough to consider?
Yes, they're still happening. A lot of people do them. Um, what most people complain about in terms of the homeowner or the seller is that from a security perspective, not just a security perspective, so you always have to be concerned about when you have one, depending on where your items are, you want to make sure that you have several people to help you. But the number one comment I've heard in the last couple years is that everybody wants something for nothing, and that the haggling process is daunting, and that there is a lot of theft that's involved. But you know what? The bottom line is it's a good dissemination process. And sometimes decluttering a lot of stuff costs money and it costs time. So a lot of people find, you know what? I might not have made much money at the garage sale, but I got rid of a lot of stuff, and that's extremely helpful. And then there are other people who do okay. A lot of people think they're a lot of work for a little bit of money. So, for me, in terms of getting a house ready for the market, if they've got the time, the energy, and the wherewithal, and they don't mind the security perspective, then go for it. But a lot of people don't, and it's, will, not that you're going to lose any money, but sometimes it's a lot easier to, put it in a bag for donation than, collect everything for weeks, clean everything for weeks, put tags on it for weeks, and then, finally do it and deal with the public. So, but it's out there still.
Thank you. And last one from Linda. From your experience, what is your recommendation on how to deal with people who are hoarders?
Okay, so again, it's a very broad term. So, there are collectors. The hoarding scale is huge. And there's different things that people hoard. There's different levels of sanitation. I myself only take on a few hoarding clients a year, and I decide on that based on the situation. Like, for example, I just finished a project where I was hired by the adult daughter. Both of her parents were going into memory care. It was a hoarding situation. So I knew the parents were going into memory care. Therefore, I had complete access to getting the home ready for sale. So they weren't going to be involved in the decision making because it was at a level where they wouldn't have let anything go. So it really depends on the situation. Is it an eviction situation? There's a lot to it. If you have to, if you're a realtor and you get involved in a home that has been hoarded, the question from a legal standpoint would be, who's in charge of this house sale? Is it the person with the hoarding tendencies? Because that's a whole different ballgame than somebody with power of attorney. Because typically people who have hoarding tendencies do not see the hoarding as an issue. So that's something I'm happy to, talk about offline. But in a true hoarding situation where you want to get the home ready for sale, it's going to involve a professional, whether it's somebody like myself or a therapist, and it's going to involve outside services like junk removal, shredding companies. It's going to be a lot of junk removal. But the caveat to that is there could be hidden treasures. So what I mean by that is people with serious hoarding tendencies don't remember where they put things. And what happens as a professional organizer is I have to go through everything before it can go out. So you might have a handbag, and that handbag might have Tic Tacs, a dog's leash, a pack of nylons, receipt, and oh my God, the title to the car. So there's no, in a true hoarding situation, there's no rhyme or reason to where somebody puts something, and you could literally find anything of value in the strangest places. So before you can call in that junk removal company and bag everything up for charity, you have to go through everything, the baby jars, the pots and pans, the socks, the coat pockets. You got to slide the paneling behind the dining room table because there might be hundreds of thousands of bonds back there. It's kind of crazy. So hopefully I answered that question.
We have Deborah, her hand raised. You can unmute it, Deborah.
Oh, because it's just me again. I put something in the chat. I just had another thought or questions. Let's say you were in a rush to get a home ready and the sellers were indecisive about getting rid of special items. Maybe they have to check with their kids that live in a different state just to check
Yep, yep, yep,
if it's
yep,
theirs and stuff. Is it just
yes.
best to suggest that they put everything in one room? Or I usually, if they have a garage, that would be best. In the garage would be messy. It would just be crap in the garage, or one side of the garage. You could still see how big the garage is, but I don't think that's too horrible, correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
I always, when I look at a house and I know there's going to be, those family decisions, and even, older adults with grown children, a lot of grown children still have stuff in the house that might have been
Yes.
theirs,
Sounds like my mom's house. Yep.
or stuff
Mm-hmm.
they want. So
Mm-hmm.
utilizing a portion of the garage, a portion of an extra bedroom, you just don't photograph it, right? And if you're neat and tidy about it, I mean, if you stack boxes neatly, if you cover it with, a nice tablecloth or whatever the case, whatever you need to do. But if it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and it is valuable, and it's going to be a time consuming process for somebody to fly in from California, and they're not going to be able to get there if you want the house up on the market in 2 weeks. That's where the possibility of a storage unit or a small move to your best
Mm-hmm.
friend's house with the stuff, because you
Mm-hmm.
still want to make this house the best looking it could be so you get the most amount of money for it. So I think that's an individual decision, but
Okay.
I don't want my clients to have to spend any extra money than they already have to get the house
Right.
ready for market, I, and I know there are wonderful, wonderful stagers out there. Depending on the price point of where the home is, most realtors feel like in my decluttering process that
Mm-hmm.
the home is more than show ready. It's more than ready for photographs. But again, if you want to take something to the next level, because I'm not keeping an inventory of furniture, art, green plants, fluffy white towels, et cetera, et cetera. I just try to use everything that they have. But if, like I showed that picture of that bedroom, that
Mm-hmm.
pretty, older gray looking bedroom. In that particular scenario, I would say to the client, do you mind if I play with the placement of the furniture? Would it be okay? I would highly suggest that you go out and buy new bedding. Would it be
Mm-hmm.
okay if I took down the curtains? But there might be other lamps somewhere else in the
Mm-hmm.
house
That
that
you
would
can
go
move.
better in that
Right.
room. So
Right.
you can shop the house
Mm-hmm.
order.
Gotcha.
You can easily shop the house before, going out. But whatever you can do to save them money, to make them more money, is the name of the game.
Right. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll take one more question from Amy. Do you help
Okay.
clients select stagers next? And what do you look for and how do you evaluate pricing?
So I don't evaluate pricing that's the agent right? I'm not a realtor. I mean, I have my pulse on the area and I mean, I can go on the internet just like everybody else, but, and this is the hardest thing. Like I've had so many realtors that I've worked with say, because of your work, Jean Marie, we made, an extra, let's just say $200,000 because the client never would have done the work, and the realtor believed that, that the decluttering process and the organization that was done was at that price point. But I can't prove that, just like I can't, I can say to my clients, listen, if you do all this work, you're going to, generate more money, but exactly how much money, I don't know. So that's definitely not my area of expertise. That would come from, a market evaluation. What was the other half of that question, Ella?
Um, do you help clients select stagers?
Oh, so usually what I do is I actually am hardly asked that question, but I have a list of stagers that I've worked with over the years that I think are wonderful. So depending on, where that person was, I'm happy to get on the phone with somebody and lead them in the right direction.
Okay, I think that's all we have. Will you
Cool.
be
Well,
able to,
thank you.
will you be sharing your slides to all of us?
Um, what I would be willing to do is give you my decluttering in a nutshell. I'm not sure. I don't. It's kind of. Gosh, I'm sorry. It's an because I spend a lot of time on my presentations. And I've been in some uncomfortable situations where I've seen my work in other places without permission. So how about we do this? I'll share my decluttering in a nutshell form, and anytime anybody has a particular question. I'm really friendly. I answer all my phone calls, my texts. Happy to, lend a resource whenever you need and give a referral. But I'd rather not give out my PowerPoint.
That's okay. You can just send me the whatever
Sure.
materials you would like to share and then include your contact information so they will be able to reach out to you as well. Okay.
Okay. Very good.
All right. So I will be putting out the recording and I will email all of the attendees about the recording once it's out and the material as well. And hope you guys have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. I hope
Thanks,
you had a good lunch.
everyone. Thank you.